recording with Dr. Robert Malone on Thursday, July 11th, 2021 at 2, no, 2024 at 2:21 p.m. Eastern time. And yeah, it's so your new book, Psy War, the link to it is in the description. And I kind of wanted to just because everyone knows who you are, and you've been on here for a little over 3 years. I don't know why I always remember. I just remember July 1st was the first time you came on. And but your new book, Psy War. So just to kind of we can pick any point to start, but what I found the most interesting was towards the end. It's and it's one thing I've always tried to put into words and haven't been able to, but you kind of said it perfectly, is just the divergence of the synthetic reality that's either believed or at the very least not believed, but propagated by the Imperium and real reality. And the only way I've ever been able to kind of put it into words is Chernobyl. It's nothing's happening, and the next guy up, nothing's happening, and the KGB is like nothing's happening, and it's like, yeah, but then like Poland's like, hey, why is there strontium 90 in the air? And it's that synthetic reality. You can keep it going for a while. In a dictatorship, in a tyrannical dictatorship, you absolutely can keep it going for a while. But eventually, as it diverges more and more, it's like imagine if Voyager 2 had an identical Voyager 2 next to it, but you took the second one and just tweaked it like a thousandth of a degree to the right. After 50 years, those things are like five solar systems apart and it comes crashing down. So I'm going to shut up. Dr. Malone, how are you doing?
Okay, Tommy, how about yourself? I'm glad to see you in this new pad. It looks pretty high end.
It,
It looks like you got the view.
I got
Uh,
I got very lucky with it.
well deserved.
Thank you.
Um, so it's you'd asked me to come on, and I'm grateful. I'm not doing as much podcasting these days. I'm traveling all the time, it seems like. And the most recent one was podcast with Nicole Shanahan, who's Bobby Kennedy's VP choice and former wife of, I think, Sergey Brin.
Oh wow.
Uh, so, and that's another long story. They had a child together and then a divorce together. And now she's a billionaire. So what's not to like?
For everyone that
Um,
doesn't recognize that name, that's the co-founder of Google.
yeah, so she's an interesting character, fascinating, really. Intellectual, Irish, Asian, lawyer specializing in artificial intelligence law, and was a full card-carrying member of the Northern California Liberati, in the sense of holistic living, 30 something. Uh, Burning Man is where she met hubby, big yoga fan, etc. And I think that having this autistic daughter kind of rocked her world and opened her eyes to things. And now she's on a journey. It's a fascinating conversation.
It is.
But as you point out, now we've got this book finally out the door over to Skyhorse Publishing. That's this Psy-War enforcing the New World Order as the subtext. And we've been working on this, particularly Jill, for over a year now, trying to pull it together. And bizarrely now, right as we have it coming online for pre-order with Amazon, sorry guys, but Barnes and Noble doesn't seem to want to comply with pre-sales. So just as it's coming online, we have this bombshell from the House Judiciary Committee, in which they're talking about the GARM agreement, something that we included in the book, the description about GARM. We were aware of how evil GARM was. That's this basically WEF facilitated alliance of advertisers. Let's see, what is the official name of this beast? The Global Alliance, what do they call themselves?
I can pull it up.
Global Alliance for Responsible Media. But what it is this structure that has tied to get together all the major advertisers. And they've all come to an agreement that they will withdraw their funding, their advertising funding, in a coordinated fashion. from any platform that fails to comport with their guidelines about disinformation. And their guidelines about disinformation have nothing to do with COVID, but apparently one of them, and in particular Coca-Cola, and a group called Group M, that is a subset of GARM, together just blew a gasket over Joe Rogan. I mean, we all kind of knew, you could see the gears working in the background,
Mhm.
but we didn't know who was who the players were that were responsible for that, other than, of course, Neil Young. Um, and bless their hearts, this House Judicial Committee has now revealed the documents and has sworn testimony, which is clearly false, from the leader of GARM, this guy Rob Rakowitz. Uh, let's just park any references to religion, please. Um, and they've been outed. And what blew Jill's circuits, I was on a podcast with somebody from Mexico yesterday. Oh, I forgot about that one. Um, and she burst into the studio and said, "Robert, you got to read this. I'm in the middle of a podcast." She's like, "You need to read this on air." And to my great surprise and her amazement, I'm specifically named as the trigger for Coca-Cola blowing a gasket about Joe Rogan and Spotify, and trying to get them demonetized, even though the people that were complaining, like Coca-Cola, don't actually advertise on Spotify for Joe Rogan, but that didn't matter. So it was surreptitious. I still trying to figure out how to leverage this to help with book sales, frankly, but it completely validates the thesis of the book, which is that we have these global transnational organizations, many of them tied to the World Economic Forum, that are the big actors here in promoting this Great Reset / New World Order, and that they've arranged to organize themselves basically above the level of nation states in alliance with the UN Agenda 2030, all that, which, as you know, the UN is now actively positioning itself as the new one world government.
I think that's actually a perfect example. Is why is Coca-Cola? You would get, you're like, what about Coca-Cola? Does this have anything to do with vaccines? No. So if it doesn't advertise on Rogan or Spotify, why does it care? Well, then what is the superlative of Coca-Cola? It's like, oh, it's the biggest beverage distributor and bottling corporation on the planet. What's the importance of that? The fact that it is the largest. Don't doesn't matter what they're producing. The fact that they're the largest. So what's the importance of that? Well, I don't know, if you were to make a list of the top X corporations, it would be one of the biggest. Now, why
Yep.
are they concerned about something completely unrelated? Oh, maybe maybe the biggest corporations are all infiltrated, influenced, or consciously a part of something, some
Yep.
supranational power. So it would be that's actually it's moronic of them. It should have been Pfizer or like, Blue
Yeah.
Cross. Coca-Cola though,
That's
that's
out of
that's a
left
dead
field.
giveaway. That's a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
This is where your parents walk in and they come back and the babysitter's leaving and then you're like, I didn't need cookies, and they're like, huh? You're like, I didn't do it. I didn't throw up. And they're like, did you eat cookies and throw up? And you start crying. But that's, yeah, no, the fact that Coca-Cola care, that's that's kind of hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, it's this new model that the World Economic Forum is actively promoting and has been for decades now, uh, which is stakeholder capitalism. So under the stakeholder capitalism, which is kind of capitalism with a socialist face, uh, and under the model of stakeholder capitalism, individual corporations have social responsibilities that they have to discharge. And of course, that is what leads straight into diversity, equity, and inclusion, environmental social governance, and all of those other programmatic efforts that they're in the middle of right now, imposing on anybody that they can possibly impose on. is that this logic that it's okay for them to stick their nose into other people's business. It's more than okay. It's a necessity for basically membership in the World Economic Forum. Previously, I've talked about these truth spirals and the process of moral outbidding that occurs on a micro scale with some of these groups, protest groups, including those that talk about medical freedom. I mention that just because that's the one that I'm familiar with. But you can see it, particularly in the UK, you can see them getting into these internal competitions to show who is the most, how else do we say it, politically correct. But it's politically correct in the context of what that particular group is pursuing. So this is moral outbidding, in which I don't like the COVID vaccine. Well, I don't like any vaccines. Well, these are all, and it goes on and on. This is actually all a massive depopulation agenda, and vaccines are the tip of the spear. And if you don't buy into those things, and then there's the next level up in a lot of these groups is there was no pandemic. And then the next level up is there is no viruses. And this, this is a truth spiral. This goes on and on and on. And I think that a lot of these corporations with the wokeism are locked into a similar thing. They're kind of trying to demonstrate through their public face and actions that they are holier than thou. They are morally superior in the policies, the stakeholder capitalism policies that they're promoting.
Which is just as bad as those truth spirals are just as bad as the holier than thou. They're both. I mean, you think I'd quote like Plato, but the one person I quote the most is a comedian, Tim Dillon. But I mean, and one thing he said years ago, and I think I actually mentioned it to you on a show, was, to say you're a liberal or conservative is simply to shirk the burden of independent thought. But we also kind of jokes about is how the opposite end of this stuff is, 9/11 was an inside job. It was an inside job by the CIA. No, it was by the Mossad. The planes weren't there. And then his is like 9/11 didn't happen. The towers are still there. September doesn't exist. But when you illuminate it like that, it gets, you start to see the ridiculousness of it. But regardless of what it is once it turns into a spiral of anything, the truth spiral and there is one step further than the virus didn't exist, and it's perhaps my favorite one. The vaccine induces fibrin blood clots because the global elite are Satanists, and they know that winged demons are coming at the end of time, and the winged demons like chewy food, and so that they're rubber.
I haven't heard that one.
That is, to me, it is just, it can't be topped. That's that's a royal flush. There's nothing to do but just like salute it. But my point is with these spirals, what they really are is it's still shirking independent thought, because you're no longer trying to pursue truth. You're trying to either, own the liberals or own the conservatives, or you're trying to one up yourself amongst your fellow people on your side. And
Yes,
that
your
still
local peer group.
has
Yeah.
nothing to do with seeking truth. That is, again, ego. The truth should be the thing that you come to the conclusion in the silence of your own mind, not caring about what anybody else thinks. And that's spirals are, we're no longer talking about truth. It's just absurdism. Who hates Trump more? The demons don't exist. The demons don't actually like chewy humans. That's just a hallucination. It goes forever, and that.
Yep.
But it kind of
Well,
comes.
and
Yeah.
Tommy, just to put a pin on this,
Yeah.
it is. I'm convinced that at least in the UK, these things are actively promoted by various government affiliated Psy war groups.
Sure.
Because what they do is they drive these dissenter collectives, let's call them, not in a communist way, but just they're associations. It drives them into a place where they delegitimize themselves with the persuadable middle. And so I'm convinced that driving truth spirals and this kind of moral outbidding is through trollery and various other tactics is an intentional strategy in order to delegitimize these people, and to prevent their ability to penetrate the wall of narrative that insulates the persuadable middle.
Yeah, no, 100,000%. It's the same way that, you know, QAnon turns people off from Trump, right? Because you have kind of mainstream, not mainstream, I guess mainstream liberals, but then you also have like current intelligent, I guess, I don't know, appointees talking about, Trump's gonna put them on trial, or Trump's gonna, for aiding and abetting human trafficking on the southern border, or manipulating with a foreign power in the 2020 election, whatever it is. And you can think about that however you want, but that's not the point. The point is, well, and then you have people in the comment sections being like, yeah, and and Ellen DeGeneres, Tom Hanks, and Oprah Winfrey were all executed at Guantanamo Bay 5 years ago, and right now their clones are carrying out a plan. And you're like, well, that's at best, you're just out of it. At worst, somebody's muddying the waters. And why
Yeah.
wouldn't you? It keeps you from the target. What are we talking about? Like vaccine efficacy and damage. And well, the demons don't like it. Shut up. It's like, it's get back to, and you gotta respect it, man. It's brilliant. They're taking the laser
Well,
pointer.
that's precisely so. Hence, that's really the core of the book is what are these tactical and operational strategies that are being deployed. Here's a series of examples. Many of them are informed by what I've experienced because now we have the smoking gun. I'm going to have to update the book in the chapter where we talk about GARM. I'm going to have to put in the receipts now that the committee has revealed to all of us. But um, uh, the intention of the book is well, it's always to make money, but you don't make any money on books, really, is the truth. We make a lot more on our Substack. But to inform, educate, alert people, to get them spun up so that they can personally better appreciate what they're being subjected to, and so that they can avoid the various pitfalls and bear traps that have been set all over the landscape, all over the information landscape. And in that way, hopefully, uh, then propaganda starts to lose its bite. This amazingly evolved technology of psychological warfare, fifth generation warfare, whatever you want to call it, that is so profoundly effective in manipulating the human mind and human psychology. Somehow we've got to break the back of that because the people that are deploying it in all kinds of different ways, including this is now, I'm convinced, part of mainstream marketing in pharmaceutical industry, these cyber tactics. And until we learn that we're being manipulated and how we're being manipulated, it's going to continue to be effective. And it's an article of faith that the most effective thing I could do, because I'm a writer and a communicator and a teacher, the most effective thing I can do is to try to put out information that'll help people to become more resistant to this technology and these practices.
And you use one of my favorite quotes several times in it is, the truth is like a lion, you need not defend it, simply let it out of its cage and it will defend itself. St. Augustine of Hippo.
Right.
And that is the truth. And it's kind of like, I don't know if like when you're little and you're in the lake or something, or you're in a pool or something, and you get turned upside down and you don't know which way's up. And if you ever like sort of gather yourself, you stop for a second, put like your hand right above your mouth and just blow out air. The bubble should hit your hand if you're facing the right way. And right, it's the quickest way to sort of establish some sort of like,
Reality test.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so one thing I try to think of is none of us are immune to our own sides or something. None of us are immune to any of this stuff. But uh, what you have to do is constantly look at it and go, how is this affecting you? What is the end point? Well, it's easy to look at someone you disagree with and say, I don't like that guy, therefore I don't like him. And it's easy to look at someone you do agree with and go, well, that's my guy. The reality is that you should look at all of this and go, what is, put your hand above your mouth and blow out the bubbles. What is the thing that's happening? This guy is teaching me something. I go double check it. Turns out that's a factual historical statement. Okay, this is leading me towards truth. Or this is leading to this, leading to this, leading to this. He wants $5,000 for his course. No, this is leading to this, leading to this, leading to this, which is why the CIA needs to fortify elections. No, this is leading to this, leading to this, leading to this, which is why Raytheon needs a bigger part in the Taiwan pie. And you go, no. The thing should always simply lead to someone is delivering you a piece of truth or a piece of wisdom. And that's don't write someone. I don't like AOC. I guarantee you she said some things that make sense. I like Trump. There's a lot of things he says I don't like. You need to remove my side, your side, and kind of put your hand above your mouth and blow the bubbles and go, good or bad? Are they now enter your credit card? Bad,
Truth,
right?
truth or fiction?
Yeah, precisely. So yeah, I don't know if I made that point, but that's what I'm trying to get out.
I think you made it pretty good. Tommy, I'm looking at you. You've matured a lot in the 3 years that we've been talking back and forth.
Thank you.
I remember the early ones. I had this sense of this young man, uh, conservative, struggling to find an audience, and now you have this grasp of material and communication and a centeredness about yourself and what your beliefs are and your own philosophy. That's a long way from where you started with a rock hard core of your morality and belief system, but I'm impressed and appreciate your comments.
Well, thank you. I think one of the things that helped me kind of with my own example of the blowing the bubbles would be people telling me to be like, hey, slow down on like the swearing or stop being so self-righteous. And I'd be like, dude, I don't care about advertisers. It's about speaking truth to power. But then eventually you'd start to go, well, who's the person telling me this? This is someone that's never asked for a penny. They've never said, hey, I'm going to withhold my Patreon payment. They're just someone that likes the show. And they're not saying do this. They're just saying, this is how I view it. And you go, that's someone that actually just likes the show and wants me to do better. And you
Yeah.
go, okay. And
That
it's humbling.
this little bubble we're in with social media is an amazing crucible to train us,
Mm.
teach us about our audiences, and only if we listen. But I think you and I both share that commitment.
And to tie it back into the book, because again, the point of the book is to make money. And I always tell people, I'm like, hey, support the podcast. It runs on money. I know that, everybody, we hate communists and socialists. You now have to apply it to yourself. The show runs on money. But that, I think there is an importance of, so like, why is it so important then to think for yourself, right? Why? But because we are coming to a point that truly is unlike anything else in history. And I don't mean the same old trope of this is the most important elect. Like that's the boy who cried wolf. You've heard it so many times you don't care. And I think you and I have talked about this before. I mean, there are general themes in power that the technology changes, but the theme doesn't change. It's,
Yeah, human behavior
core
doesn't change.
a core group of intelligentsia and power, be it chariots or be it F-22s, be it nuclear weapons or be it spears and rocks. It's the general, whether it be, not saying the mass in Latin or putting the Bible out to the layman. It's all the same themes, but we are actually approaching this this point where we're coming into new themes, and it is the maturation, the hockey stick of algorithmic control, artificial intelligence, and then the literal merging with machines. And you talk about it using fMRI or whatever's next to look at your brain waves and eventually learn how to put in brain waves. We are we're coming up to an event horizon that has been unlike
Yeah.
anything else before.
Or a singularity.
Correct. Ray Kurzweil. Yeah, the singularity that's bootstrapping itself to eternity. And like you gotta you gotta fortify your mind for whatever waterfall edge we're coming up to. Can you maybe speak on that?
So fortify your mind.
If you want,
I'm
take it whichever
I'm
direction. I
all
don't
I'm
care.
all so um what would that look like, fortifying your mind? Because we have a school system now that is not teaching logic. It's teaching memorization, acquisition of approved truths, not the ability to reason. And one of the mega trends that's going on is that here, certainly here in the United States, and I think to some extent in Europe also, is there has been a gender uh, flip in terms of higher education. More and more women, fewer and fewer young men. The young men are opting out, and they're increasingly relying on alternative sources of information, particularly podcasts. Of course, Joe Rogan is the poster child there, but only one of many. And uh, these people that are in this kind of dissenter, free thinker movement are not coming out of the old academe traditions that were supposed to be training balanced um, minds able to think their way through new circumstances and challenges. Um, so, and that's compounded by this repeated observation that the most highly educated are among the most susceptible to these psychological manipulation technologies, because they're basically trained to accept authority figures and what authority figures tell them. So that's a big part of higher education. So what does it mean to fortify yourself? I I think ability to reason autonomously is crucial. That's about logic. Uh, I'm afraid social media these days doesn't really teach logic. Uh, it teaches herd mentality, or Matthias's mass formation. Uh, and um, and yet we do seem to have the emergence of kind of a new intellectual that is um, most often not associated with an academic institution or the academy in general, but often are coming from autonomous positions that are more grounded in sovereignty, autonomy, um, uh, um, and strangely also a appreciation for historic value systems. I'm trying to use a general term. We could call it the Judeo-Christian tradition, but I think it's broader than that. People that have come to the belief that, and the opinion that in their lives and in those around them, they are committed to um, more fundamental, quote, traditional values. And that becomes their point of reference, the stabilizing factor in their lives, from whence they then build their own logical structure about how they should be in the world and what their morality is. I've run into these people all the time. And that, I think fortifying yourself is about that, but I think it's also very much about building the skill sets that one needs to survive in a corporatized world. and like, just to take the recent example of Jill and I taking on the slaughter and processing of 14 extra roosters we had, that we had actually collected the eggs from our own hens, hatched them in our own incubator, grew them up until the point that they started to be jerks to the hens, collected them all, threw them into a pen, and then last night in a marathon from starting at 5 p.m. until midnight, sacked them, plucked them, and processed them, and now they're all in the freezer in vacuum packed bags. That somehow at the end of that, even though it was midnight and I should have been exhausted, I was buzzed with the sense that I had just learned a skill set. I won't say mastered it. If I was a master of it, I would have got that done in 2 hours instead of how long it took. But I was no longer naive. I can now take a chicken, um, uh, kill it humanely, exsanguinate it, run it through our automatic plucker, you know, and then bring it into the kitchen and do the business with the knife to produce something that looks just like you might get off the shelf in your local grocery store, if not better, because I knew that
Yeah.
how they'd been killed, how they'd been handled, where they came from, how they lived, what they were fed. They were all fed on non-GMO organic products, so I don't have to worry about toxins having accumulated. And something about that was very freeing in a
Oh,
in a
yeah.
really powerful way.
It's and I think that's where the autonomous reasoning comes in, is like that first victory is so important, or any victory, to get that positive feedback. And it's,
Yeah.
it's the idea of, it's the idea of, it's like, what, why have I gone about, now that the podcast is slowly kind of working, but for the vast majority of the life of this pod, it's just been sheer terror and uncertainty. But there is a feeling of like, the guests are coming back. All right. They're not one-offs. You're kind of figuring out more. The distribution's getting better. Some people are giving you a couple shekels, and you feel like you're pushing away from the dock, and like you're in your little, your little canoe is kind of floating, and there's like 10 wrecked canoes beneath you, and you're like, okay, this one's working. And it's like, well, why did you do that? 5 years ago, you could have gone to the store and just grabbed a raft. And it was like, sure, but what happens when the store isn't there? Versus now, you go, I don't need anyone. I can make, if I need to get away from the island, everyone's going
That
crazy, eating each other.
that right there, you just said something. I don't need anyone. Of course, the counterpoint is no man is an island, but
Sure.
there's something about building a business around communication like this and sharing free thinking. And then finding that you have an audience that will support you doing it in a decentralized way. So you don't have one major donor who can call the shots and say, Tommy, you got to stop swearing.
Stop this
Um,
topic.
yeah, or stay away from that or whatever. You with this decentralized funding base that we both built in different ways,
Hmm.
me with Substack, it sets you free because you have no one major donor that can dominate your decisions. And yet you have, I don't want to sound socialistic, but there's kind of an emergence collective uh, um, sensibility about what your audience is looking for, the kinds of things that they like. And of course, you want to give them that because of your customers. But still, you have the freedom. In my case, I think in your case, we have a customer base that wants us to speak freely, to be independent thinkers. And what an enormous gift that is! That is freeing in a way that is profound. It's like, for me, I said in a Substack the other day, I started working for money when I was 13. I've never had a situation like this
It's
where I'm set free. Um, I know that I have to continue working. I have to produce product. I have to
Yeah.
deliver on a daily basis, but um, it's sustainable. I took a little bit of a hit as COVID wound down because people weren't coming just seeking whatever the latest buzz was about COVID. But that's okay. It's still plenty. And now it's gradually building along these different angles. So congratulations to you on that. And what a wonderful thing freedom is.
It and that's there's like a meme, and it's like entrepreneurs, the only people that will work 80-hour weeks to avoid 40-hour weeks. And you look at it,
Mhm.
you go, why? You, Tommy, are you making millions? No, I'm still making less than I would have 10 years ago at a normal job. And it's like, well, then what's the purpose? Freedom isn't just some, like, you read it and you go, we hold these truths to be self-evident, and you go, hey, okay, yeah, it's all, I pledge allegiance to, okay. No, no, no. There is a feeling of when you go, I don't need anyone, and and it's like, so what, do you lounge around? I guarantee you I still work harder than people that have jobs. Like, you have to keep yourself at that grind, but there's a there's something deep in the soul that is that it's like a flower opening towards the sun, where you're like,
Nice.
this is what I'm supposed to do. And then, but there's a meta theme to that, and it's what you just said is COVID dies down, less people are looking for COVID. Okay, well, what if you don't need a raft anymore? You're putting the raft is in the new thing. Okay, sure, but I now know that what starts as uncertainty and anxiety is actually par for the course to creating a raft. So I don't need a raft anymore, but you can't create an airplane. No, I can, because I know I'll be ostracized. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of trial and error, embarrassment, and despair. And then eventually I'm going to have the kitty hawk where it gets above the ground. You go, I can do it again. So it's not about the raft or the chickens or anything. It's you go, I can do that. Shut the podcast down. I now know that if I have 5 years, I can build an independent revenue source. And that is, I mean, that's
Really cool.
breaking the chains of like the
Yeah.
centralized government. You're like, I've ascended. It is,
Yeah.
yeah, right?
Yeah. So along these lines of freedom, uh, I did another podcast, or I'm sorry, Substack the other day. I had received a book from the Mises Institute down in Alabama, uh, unsolicited. It just came in the mail, uh, and the title is "What has Government Done with Our Money?" And um, I knew that was going to be important because it related to this whole issue of anarcho-capitalism that I find so fascinating. And I knew that I don't know hardly anything about money and monetary theory and economics because I avoided all those courses when I was an undergraduate. Uh, so I plowed through this thing, and many insights later where the author has built up from uh, first principles uh, his assessment of the nature of money, issues about transportability, divisibility, etc., the benefits of basing money on gold or silver or any metal standard, and why that works and why fiat currency doesn't work. And um, and I get to the end, and he's discussing that one of his core theses is that uh, there's essentially only two ways to generate wealth. One is through the application of your own labor, mental and physical, on the world, and the other is theft. And taxation is functionally theft. And inflation is a form of taxation. Most of us now recognize that to be the case. That inflation has been used historically as a way to capitalize wars and the welfare state. but that when you migrate to fiat currency, which really powers inflation, enables inflation, along the road, one of the key insights for me was the whole reason why Nixon went off the gold standard was he had to in order to capitalize and fund the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War is what tanked the gold standard in the United States. I hadn't realized that before. And that the whole problem with inflation as a function of a fiat currency nation by nation is that there are imbalances in inflation rates between different nations, and that results basically in driving trade imbalances. And because the fiat currency at any one point doesn't represent reality, it represents kind of a fabricated truth, as we were talking about earlier. And so you get these trade imbalances, and it's a major problem for governments to be able to inflate their way out of debt, et cetera, is that asynchrony between government A and government B, if they have trade relations with each other. And so here, this was the one that just blew my mind. The author finally came to me as Murray Rothbard.
Yeah.
The book was first written in '63, but it's been updated, including just this year, which is maybe why the Mises Institute sent it to me. I don't know. But the capstone of all this that just blew my circuits, because I'd never heard it laid out before. And he used different, in the book, they used different language instead of central bank digital currency. But the problem with independent fiat currencies and allowing them to float and compete with each other on the world stage is this asynchrony of inflation. Governments all inflate their currencies in order to capitalize their debt in these various spending programs. But it has this consequence, a series of consequences. And the belief is that the way out of the woods that will allow governments to harmonize their efforts, their activities in utilizing inflation as a surreptitious form of taxation, the way out of the woods is to create a centralized currency with one global organization that can manage that and manage the rates of inflation. He was describing CBDC and the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements. He predicted it. He predicted the rise, and it wasn't because of social credit systems or the need to capture data from people or any of that. It was all about managing the problems associated with fiat currency in inflationary spirals so that they don't get in, because the thing that scares them all silly is hyperinflation. And hyperinflation is something they cannot control because it's an organic thing that comes out of a populace when it loses its confidence in the currency. Having that epiphany now that a lot of my peers and colleagues that are focused on other aspects of central bank digital currency hadn't recognized was that this is really probably driven by independent nation states wanting to circumvent the problems of their inflationary approaches to financial management, all enabled by their own central banks, of course, they don't want us to have financial freedom. They don't want us to have a money that's grounded in something tangible, a commodity that has an intrinsic value that is harmonized globally, like gold. Pure gold is pure gold is pure gold. And it has a value, and that value is set on a daily basis by the market. And you don't have to fuss around about government policy and whether or not they're trying to boost the value of the currency or deflate it or whatever. Gold is gold and silver is silver. That led to my final epiphany. I'm finally getting around to the point. I'd always thought when Javier Milei said freedom damning in his election acceptance speech for president of Argentina. He was talking about personal freedom and sovereignty and autonomy. I think he was also talking about economic freedom. We think of freedom of speech, and freedom of thought as the two cornerstones. We forget that economic freedom is at least as important. And we overlook it all the time. We accept this narrative from these large corporations and from these nation states that we all live under, that it's right and proper that they control monetary policy, quote unquote. They control the economy. We think it's necessary, but it's not. It can all be regulated through free market concepts. The value of money, if it's tied to some tangible commodity, could be oil. The problem with oil is the quality of oil varies, depending on its sulfur content, et cetera, et cetera. So you can't really say a barrel of oil is a fixed commodity like an ounce of gold is, pure gold. But the point that when we had, and Rothbard makes the case that it's not necessary to have a national mint. It's not necessary except for the state to control the minting and distribution of money. It's in the state's interest, but it's not in the interests of us as independent beings. And I think what Millier is talking about is a lot deeper than just personal freedom or freedom to speak or freedom to think. I think because remember, he's an economist. He's not just an economist. He is a self-described anarcho-capitalist. And this is the core of anarcho-capitalism, is the state is not necessary. And this whole logic about money, the nature of money and freedom, economic freedom, is all wrapped around the thesis that we really don't need the state in here manipulating our money, because all they do is figure out ways to steal. Over.
Rothbard predicting, CBDCs, or G. Edward Griffin in his book Creature from Jekyll Island, which I read in 2021. He called it I don't know when that was written. He called it the banker, BANKOR. He said that will be a new future note used digitally.
Yep.
And
yep.
So you go, how do they know? Oh, these guys are just the best economists of all time. That's definitely a role, but I think it comes back to the, slaughtering and processing the chicken or the raft. What we're not seeing is they probably had some original victory that maybe happened in college or high school where they had an idea and the professors called them stupid, and the equivalent of, I think the earth might not be flat. And then they went through all the ridicule, and then it turned afterwards, someone went, "You're a genius." What's the quote? The difference between madness and genius is profit margin. But I would say it's also just accuracy. So they probably had probably some unknown victory that we'll never know of because it wasn't written down, to where they went, "I can do this." And once you start to, we talked about, it's not just about making the raft or the chicken. You now have the confidence to do something new, like a hot air balloon, or it's not just chicken. You probably now have a little more confidence to go, I could probably learn to farm this or to grow that, or even to learn metallurgy. You go, they're less terrifying, opaque things, and you go, with enough time and effort, and you'll get ridiculed and personal failures, you will succeed. So these guys so what happens is, once you start to build up these victories, like the public one for me is the podcast. Before it was being a freshman in college and being like just a jock idiot and deciding I wanted to go to med school, and kind of like mocked failure, and then eventually getting in. And I'd go, I know that if I put like a goal on the horizon, I can do it. And I'll go through all the course to get there and all the pitfalls, but eventually it will work. So then what happens is, you go, once you start to build up the little victories, you go, I built the raft. Then I no longer needed the raft. And then I learned how to build the hot air balloon, and I learned how to process the chicken. You then start going, you get a little more confident in your projection powers. You go, I know that in 5 years I can do this, or in 50 years this thing will probably happen, and you feel less crazy for saying it. You no longer, you've grown thick
Yeah.
skin, you no longer care about it. So that's why they can kind of make these predictions, as it comes back down to, what is the core of all of it? It's, what's the atom of it? It's confidence in autonomous thought. And to go back even farther, which is why the founding fathers are just so brilliant, you, they go, everyone just needs a gun. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good your independent thought. So we're talking about, well, we need a fixed thing. Well, what did they do 111 years ago, right? Central the Federal Reserve, Nixon gold window, or the Bretton Woods. They looked at it, and the people that are having the same realizations we're having, but they're demons, and they go, well, how do we take that away from them? Take away the gold, give them paper. There is just something so brilliant that 248 years ago, they had all these things, and they went, but at the end of the day, you gotta be able to pop a couple rounds off, because that's the only true guarantor of
Uh-huh.
freedom. Autonomous rationale means nothing if you can't back up what
Yeah.
get off my property kind of thing. So there is it's not just it's not you and I just pushing a motivational course. Learn how to think autonomously. No, it is good for your ego, it's good for humility, but it's the Voyager 2 spacecraft. No, no, you start to bring it back in, and you're in line with reality. It's not different inflation rates. You're in line with it's gold being $35 an ounce for 100 years straight.
Right.
You come back down to reality. And that's, I think, the importance of this stuff is it's not go out and become your own boss. Like, no, there's something so much more just divine about it, is truly feeling like you've got your hands in the sand, and you're not looking at a picture of the beach. You're like, I can feel the hot sand. I can hear the waves. You're back in reality. It doesn't matter if someone on TV is telling you to not trust your ears and eyes. No, the vaccine's great. We war in Ukraine, we're winning, and there's no southern border problem. And you're like, I want to believe it, but I don't believe it, man. And I think that's kind of the importance of this. And if you don't have that, so how do we wrap this all into one thing? If you don't have that, then they don't need bullets or tanks.
Yeah.
They have Psy Ops.
41.
They've
Yeah.
already, they don't need anything. They know that you're going to look at a screen. You
Let
have
me,
no
can I
idea
tell
how
you
to think
another story?
independently. Yeah, go for it.
Another story, Tommy. So I had a, a family show up at our gate a little while ago. Um, they're touring the United States in their van, one of these modern four-wheel drive vans that you can go off-roading. And husband and wife and 5 kids. And they had struck up a conversation with Jill and wanted to come over and talk. And then they came over, but we were in somewhere else in the world. And so our farm manager gave them a little tour, and then they came back. And so I invited them in and invited them to stay in the guest house overnight on their road to New York, where they're heading off to. And they made dinner for us, and we sat around and talked. So the story here is the father, an engineer. They've been living in Eastern Oregon. And the wife, named Jill, is um, uh, her father and grandfather were both um, Methodist ministers, as I recall. So very grounded in, let's say, Judeo-Christian ethics, uh, as is he. So he's working as an engineer in a government contractor, and he has successfully resisted the jab because he was one of the few in his company that wouldn't accept it. But just before the deadline, when they were going to have to fire him because of their being a federal contractor, the Supreme Court judgment came in, and all of that was canceled. So he dodged the bullet on that one. but was really struck by the dynamics in his coworkers of people that stopped talking about it, wouldn't talk to him about it, would admit privately that they thought it was a bad idea, but then they went ahead and complied because they wanted to keep their job, etc. So he talked about that and he said, and then I saw the same thing all happening again. I thought that after they've been all through this, they would have learned to not let this happen. And then along comes the DEI test and the training that you have to take. And you have to pass this DEI test, otherwise you're going to be terminated. And in it, you have to accept the transgender logic, etc. You have to embrace it. Otherwise, you can't pass the test. And so he looks at the test and starts it, and he's just like, I can't agree to this stuff. And so I'm not going to complete the test. I'm not going to take it. And he gets more and more pressure to take the damn test. And he digs in and he sees the same dynamics in the people around him. And in the end, he absolutely adamantly will not take the test, and they fire him. Call him into the vice president's office and they fire him. And he tells me this whole story in the context of talking about the other things that he's doing. And I turn to him and I say, yeah, but you know what? Yeah. And he tells me that he can get another job. It's not critical. But after they fired him, they just decided to take this vacation. I said, you know what? You still own your soul and they don't. And that's worth a ton. Even if you have to take a lower salary, if you still own your soul and you haven't compromised it, I ran it as we were doing the research on propaganda that forms the backbone of the book, Bernays' original text, etc. There's a French author, I don't remember the name, I apologize, that preceded Bernays that writes about propaganda.
Gustave Le Bon.
No, it's not Gustav. But he makes the point that once someone accepts and acts on propaganda, it becomes part of them.
Mm.
And they can't disassociate themselves from it anymore. It's part of their reality. They've accepted it. Once they accept that propaganda and they act on it, that's the action part. Okay. Then this is like letting the vampire in the door. You've once you accept it, it's part of you. And these people that are compromising themselves for the short-term gain of retaining their job or whatever are going to find themselves in a position where they don't have the same free will that they had before. And I noticed we just got a ping. We have a 5-minute clock running on us.
We do?
Yeah, from Zoom. But
We,
to cap it,
we can keep
yeah,
going.
okay.
If you gotta run, we can run. No,
No,
it'll
I
keep
just
going.
it was a Zoom notice that I just got.
It should not
Here's
be.
the thing. So I went to Romania a couple of times, and the Romanian people were subjected to the same pressure as the rest of Europe through the European Union to take the jab and to accept the vaccine cards, the green pass. And they were told that if they didn't take the jab and they didn't get the green pass, then they would be terminated. And en masse, the people of Romania basically told the government to pound sand. They didn't accept it. And so they basically went on strike. They said, okay, fine, we're not going to come to work. In 4 days, the government capitulated. And Romania remains one of the least jabbed with one of the best all-cause mortality profiles of any European nation through the COVID crisis. These small acts of resistance can result in big changes. But even if it's only for you or your family or the people around you, if you stay true to your soul, to your belief system, to your moral system, you come out of that experience, and it is absolutely like being forged in a crucible.
Mm-hmm.
You come out of that experience like you're expressing with your podcast, where you've been through the valley of death, and come out the other side, and it empowers you. It's also, Tommy, it's a core principle in the storyline of the hero's journey.
Oh yeah, no, Joseph Campbell. Oh yeah,
The
Belly
hero
of the
hero
whale.
comes out of his time of trial uh, empowered with wisdom to share with people around them. They may or may not accept it. That's another part of the hero's journey, but story. But still, it's clearly been recognized by humanity forever that those who stand against the forces of darkness and evil, um, they come out the other side a different person, and in many ways a stronger soul.
Yeah, it's the no, and then yeah, it's the right the call to adventure, and then and ignore Zoom. I don't know why they shouldn't do that. Just don't pay attention to it. But yeah, the call to adventure, then you ignoring it, and then it comes again. I used to know all the steps, but yeah, belly of the whale, atonement of the father, and then you come back, and it's freedom to live in like duality, and then you become the person calling people to adventure, and it's a cyclical thing. But yeah, no, the once you start acting on something that it's once you start making a compromise with your soul, it's I would imagine, things start with like, you're like, I'm gonna sell weed for money. And then you move on to I'm gonna sell, cocaine. And let's just say it's like pre-fentanyl. And you go, now I'm gonna sell heroin. You go, that could kill people. And once you make that, you go, I'm making money. I don't care. Well, then it
Slippery
moves up.
slope.
Well, then it moves up a
Right.
notch, and you go, well, I'm going to sell these weapons. Well, who's buying weapons with a cut off barrel and no number on them? You're like probably someone that's going to do something with these, and you go, I'm making money. Well, how many steps down the road does it get to? Yeah, I'll get into human trafficking. What about child trafficking? There's probably some human traffickers that are like, no, 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 I don't touch that. Then there are probably some guys who just have shark eyes. They're like, I don't care, and it spirals that way forever. So once you make that compromise, it's almost irreversible. You can reverse it. You can reverse it, and it's hard, but you can. It's almost unstoppable to go down that.
Tommy, I make this point in the context of American foreign policy and imperialism. And I talk about it in the book. Um, my thesis is that post World War II, in the power vacuum, the United States stepped in because, of course, there needed to be somebody, and better us, because we were good guys, better us than China or Russia. Uh, and then we, as a national security apparatus, State Department, et cetera, made these series of justifications that it's okay to overthrow governments. It's okay to empower coups. It's okay to assassinate leaders. And personally, I think that the assassination of President John F. Kennedy and his brother uh, those decisions were probably um, the prelude to the ability to justify that as necessary to
Hmm.
support national policy and the objectives of the national security state was probably the consequence of this same slippery slope phenomena you're describing on the level of the individual, but at the level of these group dynamics of nation state intelligence and security apparatus and defense that this is justifiable because of this higher calling that we have, this
Mm.
broader strategic objective. And I think that that's the when I wrote about this the other day on Substack, I tried to make the case that um, what has happened here in the States is we no longer take as one of our core principles that there are moral boundaries. that we need to respect as absolutes. We treat everything as context dependent. And so when you do that, anything can be justified. Whereas if you say, no, we will not murder people, or I cite in this essay the Treaty of Westphalia, and I talk about it in the book also. This 1600s treaty that resolved this long-standing war in Northern Europe. And Treaty of Westphalia basically established core principles, one of the most important of which is that in the case of sovereign nations will not interfere with the internal affairs of other sovereign nations. And it's upon that and the agreement to seek diplomacy first rather than military conquest, etc., that Europe emerged and grew and thrived. And the whole concept of the sovereign nation state was developed based on the Treaty of Westphalia. And we've convinced ourselves that that's obsolete, and that it's okay for the United States to interfere with the internal affairs of other nation states. We do it all the time. It's documented over 60 coups directly caused by the CIA, easily, trackable, and probably at least 80 since, I think, 1950, since the founding of the CIA. So we've justified that. And now what we have is kind of the next step in that. Well, so the logic of the Treaty of Westphalia, the idea of the sovereign nation state that has its own rights and privileges, is now considered to be obsolete, that it is not able, that system is not able to solve the great problems of the world, like anthropomorphic climate change. And therefore, we have to create a new supranational global centralized governmental authority to manage all these independent governments. And we need to place them below the level of that. And then sitting above that structure, which is basically UN WEF fusion, we have, because both of them identify themselves as the new world government. They're not shy about it. Above that, we have, and this is one of the theses of the book, we have global public-private partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
You know where I'm going with that. That essentially meets the definition of globalized fascism. But we have these global public-private partnerships. And in a sense, the GARM agreement is an example, the GARM organization that we started off by talking about. And they now are establishing, through their own think tanks and their own organizations, policy groups that are providing the guidance and logic that then is getting taken in and assimilated by the WEF and the UN to generate their new worldwide policies. So formerly we thought the nation state was supreme, but because of this kind of moral slippery slope, we're now in a position where we not only have organizations that believe themselves to be superior to nation states, but we have other organizations that are corporate funded that believe that they are the ones that basically drive the policy in this new world order, this new globalized single government. And that's where the book really lands, is you gotta understand what this trajectory of history has been since World War II, and the role of the United States, the consequences of justifying our actions because it's better, by basically justifying our actions based on American exceptionalism, that we're more moral and we're better people than USSR and CCP. And so in the face of the power vacuum, of course, we had to step in because we're more morally fit. but then we proceeded to just throw away um, our our uh, our moral standing, our core principles and beliefs, and all threw it away on the altar of expediency and uh, utilitarianism, the greatest good, ends justify the means, the greatest good for the greatest number. And so I think your examples of individual behavior also map to what we're observing on a much more global scale in terms of modern politics. And again, this comes back to good times breed weak men.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I think that we're suffering from a deficit of strong men and strong belief systems uh, that have allowed us to collectively fall down those slippery slopes that you're describing.
And it's cyclical. I don't think it will ever actually end. But, it's you do eventually have to rectify it. And it's not, in terms of, I guess, entropy or enthalpy or, path of least resistance, it's like to keep this current thing going, you need trillions of dollars and you need, black ops, wet work, you need military intervention, assassination, surveillance, supercomputers, hypercomputers, liquid nitrogen cooled AI controlling algorithms, and subversion, and the dead internet theory, and nonstop surveillance. And it's like, okay, pretty energy intensive. What's the other? And it's like, get married, have kids, learn to farm. And you're like,
Yeah.
that one is, hey, man, it doesn't have satellites, but doesn't need it, you know? And it's when
Yeah.
you're not trying to overthrow the world and project your will onto everyone. Life can actually be pretty simple. And but I don't think the average person doesn't necessarily know that until you see, how far down the road this one goes. And back to what you're saying about going through the gauntlet and kind of preserving your soul, that really is the key to all of it is, oh, what just happened? We just lost Dr. Malone. What happened? Oh, it just disappeared. Well, I'll see if he comes back in. What I was getting at was doing the right thing and maintaining your soul. Like he said, just said Microsoft decided to just update in the middle. Yeah, so his computer just started updating. So yeah, we'll wrap. But what I was gonna say is, well, what happens when you do the right thing? And it's like, well, at first it sucks. You get banned from YouTube, iTunes, whatever. You can, all that happens, and then it's like the full arc is like you come back and you build a following on another platform like Rumble, and you start to build it up again, and you maintain your soul and your ethics and your morals, and it does feel good in the end. But you got to take it one step further and be like, well, what if the punishment isn't getting banned from YouTube? What if the punishment is getting shot? What if the punishment's a hellfire missile? What if the punishment is being hung in your cell? What if the punishment, not to associate Epstein with this weird moral, Michael Hastings, the journalist that was, talking crap about Petraeus. What happens when your car accelerates and, the engine block flies out 9 blocks? You go, well, then it's not worth it, right? Because you die. This is kind of how I look at it. Either heaven is real, reincarnation and karma, and you've maintained your soul, and thus you are ascending to the next whatever wheel of karma, or you're breaking it and you're going into the gates of heaven, Or there is nothing after this, and clinical brain death is just nothing. It's not blackness because blackness is an experience. It's just nothing. It's a dream you don't remember. Either way, I think it's worth it because while you're still alive, you maintain your soul, even as they're handcuffing you and putting the barrel of the gun in the back of your head. You've still maintained your soul. And either you go on and you're rewarded for your earthly acts, or there's nothing. But either way, you've never given up your soul. So that is something I try to look at. It's like it's not all, and then the story arc works out and you go on Rumble and build the show. That's not always the case. You can get killed for it. Are you okay with that? Yeah. Well, when your family miss you, and sure. But if they're willing to kill me or anyone, Dr. Malone, whoever, Joe Rogan, to stop you from saying whatever it is you're saying, then whatever it is you're saying is preventing the implementation of some long-term plan they have. A plan that, just like you'd invest $1 million in a business that you thought you could make 10 million on, if they're willing to kill you, that means the thing that they're trying to incorporate a long-term plan. And why do they have to kill you? Because you're speaking things that would halt that plan. Whatever the thing is that they're enacting is far worse than killing you. It's killing you and killing your family. So there's kind of, it's like if you saw water in the Titanic and you were like running up the stairs to be like, hey, and let's just say there's some, I don't know, evil security guard. And he is like, get back down there. And you're like, no, he's like, I'm going to shoot you. You might be like, well, I don't want to get shot because my family will miss me. Even if I don't care about my life, my family will miss me. But you have to ask yourself, well, what are they willing to do? They're willing to kill you. That's a pretty big thing that they're willing to do. Why would they be willing to do that? Well, because they want the ship to sink, and that will kill me and my family. So it's like once they're threatening to kill you, they're already trying to perpetuate a plan that also includes your death, right? It's maybe the best way to put it's this. It's like the idea of shooting down a hijacked plane. Plane's got 300 people on it. It's hijacked. You shoot it down, you kill 300 people. You don't shoot it down, that plane goes and crashes into a building, kills 3,000 in the building and 300 on the plane. There's the Once they're willing to do that, the very thing that they're trying to protect by killing you is so much worse than killing you. It's killing you and everyone you know and love. So, it's worked out well for me in that relatively well. The podcast is, slowly kind of succeeding. But I also understand that that's not like where the story arc ends. I understand that there is a much greater ceiling to the pain and suffering, almost an infinitely greater ceiling of kidnapping, of torture, of killing your loved ones. But what you have to understand is like by the time they're willing to do that and do that overtly, things are in motion that are so much worse than whatever it is they're willing to do to you. So it's either you go out like a boss and either there's nothingness or and then what's the only other option? Well, if there's nothingness, then what do I care? Go out like a king. But like, screw you, man. If there's nothingness, that means that this is all that there is, and I'm not going to let you take what's mine. Or you go into the arms of a loving God, or you're released from karma. So it's like there's really no reason not to do the right thing. So, you know, just do the right thing, man. I saw a meme. I saw a meme. Let me pull it up right now that John Barnwell sent to me this morning. It was great. I don't know, man. I'm starting to doubt that this bloated surveillance state war machine run by an ancient demonic cult of child rapists can be fixed by voting. And I think that's true. And that's not a call for violence, but that's a call for like, hey man, you can't just go cast a vote. You have to speak truth to power. You got to be true to yourself. You got to find God. You got to learn to farm. So that's it, guys. We're gonna wrap this one up. I gotta use the restroom. Much love, everybody. Thank you so much for watching.